The night was alive, not with song, but with screams swallowed by the forest. A boy ran barefoot through the rain, his breath trembling like the wind through dead leaves. He had seen his mother fall, and the silence that followed was louder than thunder. They said fear kills the weak. But if that were true, why was he still alive? Somewhere beyond the trees, an old monk waited by a flickering lamp, as if expecting him. When the boy's eyes met the monk's, time stopped. And the monk whispered, "If you wish to end fear, you must enter it." The boy trembled, the rain fell harder, and the world held its breath. Was this meeting a curse, or the beginning of awakening? The storm eased, but Ananda's heartbeat did not. Inside the hut, the old monk lit a single lamp. Shadows moved like spirits across the clay walls. Sumitra said nothing, only pointed to the floor. Ananda sat, soaked, shivering, afraid to close his eyes. The silence was heavy, yet kind. Somewhere between raindrops, he heard his mother's voice, not of pain, but peace. And in that fragile stillness, fear began to breathe softer, as if it too were tired of fighting. The monk broke the silence. "Fear is not your enemy," he said softly. "It is your teacher." Ananda looked up confused. "But it hurts," he whispered. Sumitra smiled faintly, then listened to the pain. "It is trying to tell you something." Outside, the rain softened to mist. A single droplet fell from the roof and struck the flame, but it did not die. That night, Ananda dreamt of the forest again, but this time, he was not running. He walked through the mist toward the same shadow that had once chased him. The shadow stopped, bowed, and dissolved into light. When he woke, his tears had dried. The monk was still there, eyes open, as if he too had been watching the dream. "You met him, didn't you?" the monk asked. Ananda nodded slowly. By dawn, the rain had ceased. Mist drifted through the trees as the monk handed Ananda a bowl of rice. "You will stay here," he said, "until fear no longer hides." The boy nodded, holding the bowl with both hands, as if it were something sacred. The forest, once terrifying, now hummed with quiet life. Droplets on leaves, the murmur of wind, the whisper of awakening beginning. Days turned into weeks. The forest temple breathed with silence, and silence began to breathe through Ananda. But silence has its own echoes, and sometimes they sound like fear. When he closed his eyes, he heard whispers, laughter, cries, the echo of his name. "Sit through it," the monk had said. So he sat, through hunger, through noise, through the trembling that rose like wind beneath his skin. Fear did not vanish. It waited, patient and proud, like an old king unwilling to yield his throne. That night, the whispers became faces. Shadows formed along the walls. His mother, his own frightened reflection, the monk's silhouette, merging and melting. His breath quickened. He wanted to run, but his legs were stone. Then he remembered the monk's words, "Do not fight it." So he closed his eyes and for the first time did not flee from the darkness. Morning came pale and cold. Ananda told the monk about the faces. Sumitra smiled faintly. "Those faces are the pieces of yourself that you've refused to see." He placed a mirror before the boy. "Look carefully, not at the face, but at the fear behind it." Ananda looked and saw his reflection tremble, though he did not. As the sun set, the monk took him to the temple courtyard. "Here," he said. "Stand in your own shadow." Ananda obeyed. His shadow stretched long across the ground, trembling in torchlight. "Now bow to it," said the monk. The boy hesitated, then slowly bowed. The wind fell silent. Somewhere deep inside, something unclenched. That night, The temple bells echoed through the forest. Ananda sat awake, the sound vibrating through his chest. For the first time, fear did not come. Only stillness, deep, vast, and kind. In the quiet ringing, he realized something. Fear had never been chasing him. It had always been calling him home. The rains had passed, leaving the forest washed in green. Bhante Sumitra called for Ananda to follow him into the inner chamber of the monastery, a place no novice had entered before. "What you fear most lives here," said the monk, lighting a single lamp. The air was heavy, as if holding its breath. The walls seemed to pulse with unseen life. Ananda swallowed hard. "Master," he whispered, "what if fear wins?" Sumitra smiled faintly. "Then you will finally know who lost." They sat facing the darkness. Hours passed in silence. Then, a ripple in the shadows. The air cooled. From the corner, something began to move. Slow, deliberate, like smoke learning to walk. Two eyes formed first. Then a face that wasn't a face at all. The whisper came from everywhere and nowhere. "You called for me." Ananda froze. His body wanted to run, but his mind could not move. Mara's voice was soft, almost kind. "Why do you run from me, little monk?" Ananda's voice trembled. "Because you frightened me." The shadow smiled, its edges trembling like fire. "Then I am real. And if I am real, what are you?" The boy said nothing. Behind him, Sumitra's voice echoed gently. "He is the watcher of both." The shadow turned toward the monk, fading, reforming, as if unsure which of them was more alive. Ananda's fear rose again. But this time, he did not close his eyes. He looked directly at Mara. The more he stared, the less form Mara had. The shadow began to waver, like smoke in wind. "I am you." Then, Ananda said quietly, "You can rest." For a heartbeat, both faces, boy and shadow, merged into one reflection of stillness. When dawn broke, the chamber was empty, but for the boy and the monk, the lamp had gone out by itself. "He will return," Sumitra said. "Fear always does. Each time you must welcome him as a guest." Ananda nodded, his expression no longer of a frightened child, but of someone who had seen himself through darkness. Outside, the forest glowed gold, and the air no longer carried echoes, only peace. One morning, Bhante Sumitra handed Ananda a small clay bowl and said, "Go to the charnel ground. Sit among the dead until the dead are no longer strangers." The words chilled him more than the cold dawn air. As he walked through the forest path, the songs of birds faded. The scent of smoke and decay grew heavy. Every step felt like walking deeper into the body of fear itself. The charnel ground lay silent, a world stripped of illusion. Scattered bones glimmered pale in moonlight. Torn cloth fluttered on thorn bushes like forgotten prayers. Ananda's breath shook. He sat cross-legged among the remains, the bowl before him. The night hummed with insects, but in that sound, he heard something deeper. The quiet voice of impermanence. Hours passed. The fear that once screamed now whispered. In the corner of his vision, something moved. A figure crawling from behind a mound of bones. It was a corpse, eyes open, mouth moving though no sound came. For a moment, Ananda's body froze, heart hammering. Then something within him softened. He bowed to it. The corpse stopped moving and slowly dissolved into dust. At dawn, Sumitra arrived quietly. He saw Ananda sitting unmoving, his robe wet with dew. "What did you see?" he asked. Ananda replied, "I saw death bow back to me." The monk smiled faintly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then you have seen truth. The one who bows, the one who dies, they are the same." The forest shimmered with new light, as if hearing those words. Before they left, Ananda turned one last time toward the field of bones. The fear that had followed him since childhood was gone, not slain, but understood. "Master," he said softly, "death has a strange face. It looks like peace." Sumitra nodded, his eyes glimmering with quiet joy. "Then you have seen the heart of fear. It never wished to harm you, only to awaken you." The monsoon returned with fury. For days the sky broke open, and the river roared like 1,000 drums. Bhante Sumitra watched as Ananda built a small raft from branches. "Why go to the river?" the monk asked. "Because it's loud," Ananda said, "and fear hides in noise." Sumitra nodded. "Then go, but remember you do not cross water by fighting its current." The current seized the raft the moment it touched the water. Ananda gripped the ropes, rain slicing his face. The river twisted like a living serpent, pulling him toward jagged rocks. The roar swallowed every sound, except one. His own breath, steady and deep like the monk had taught him. For the first time, he wasn't fighting the storm. He was flowing with it. A sudden crash, the raft splintered against stone. Ananda plunged into the cold. The world became liquid darkness. As his body sank, visions came. His mother's face, Mara's eyes, the monk's calm smile, all dissolving into bubbles of light. The fear that once clung to him loosened, floating upward like breath. And beneath it, a voice whispered, "You were never drowning. You were being carried." He awoke on the riverbank at dawn, chest heaving. The forest shimmered, washed clean by rain. Bhante Sumitra sat nearby, silent, eyes closed, as if in prayer. Ananda whispered, "I thought I died." The monk smiled faintly. "You did, and what remained after dying is what cannot die." For the first time, Ananda felt weightless, not empty, but full of stillness. Later that day, as the sun burned through the mist, Ananda looked into the river. Its reflection no longer frightened him. The water flowed endlessly, changing, yet never lost. He smiled and said quietly, "Fear is just water pretending to be fire." Sumitra nodded. "And now you can walk through both." Together, they watched the current, silent, infinite, free. Night returned, but it no longer frightened him. The forest whispered as if alive, calling his name. Bhante Sumitra said quietly, "Tonight you will meet him again, not as a child, not as prey, but as the one who listens." Ananda bowed and walked into the dark. The wind moved softly between the trees. Every shadow felt familiar now, each one breathing like an old friend. At the heart of the forest stood an ancient tree, hollow and wide as a cave. Ananda sat beneath it. The air grew still, colder. Then, the same presence returned, Mara, vast and quiet, rising like smoke from the roots, but this time there was no menace. "You came back," Ananda whispered. "So did you," the shadow replied. "I never left." Mara circled him like wind. "Why do you not run?" Ananda answered softly. "Because I see you now." The shadow paused. "Then who am I?" "You," Ananda said, "are the echo that shows me my own voice." Mara's form trembled, dissolving into light and smoke, reforming as faces, mother, monk, child, all fading into silence. The world vanished into silence, not empty, but alive. Fear, pain, and longing melted into one soundless breath. Ananda felt the boundary between himself and everything else dissolve. Mara's last whisper echoed gently. "Then my work is done." The light within the forest brightened. Not from the sky, but from the stillness itself. When dawn came, Bhante Sumitra found Ananda sitting at the edge of the forest, eyes open, unmoving. "You met him again," the monk said. "Yes," Ananda replied, "and now he is part of me." The monk smiled. "Then there is nothing left to fear." They sat together in silence as the first sunlight touched their faces, and for a long moment, the world itself seemed to exhale. Years passed, and the forest monastery grew quiet again. Bhante Sumitra's hut now stood empty, its lamp forever lit. Ananda, no longer a boy but a calm young monk, tended the same path where he had once trembled. Children from nearby villages came to listen to him. He never called himself a teacher. He only told stories of a boy, a monk, and a shadow that taught them both to see. A small boy once asked, "Master, do you still fear the dark?" Ananda smiled. "No," he said. "The dark fears itself." The children laughed, not fully understanding, but something in his voice stayed with them. A warmth that carried the weight of oceans. For in those simple words, the child heard the echo of his own courage waiting to awaken. That evening, Ananda sat alone by the river, where his fear once drowned. The water glowed silver under the moon. He whispered a prayer, not for safety, but for all beings still lost in their own storms. "May they see the light that hides within their shadows," he said. The river seemed to bow in return. At dawn, villagers found his robe folded neatly beside the riverbank. No footprints led away, no struggle marked the ground. Some said he had walked into the light. Others said the forest took him back. But those who had heard his teachings knew he had not gone anywhere. He had only dissolved into the silence he once feared. Years later, the children, now grown, still gathered by the same river. They repeated his words softly, as if summoning a prayer carried by the wind. "Fear is not the end. It is the beginning." And in that echo, the forest seemed to listen once more. Somewhere, unseen, the silence smiled.